And we're live.
What's going on? I am Dave Tate, and we are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. Today's episode is brought to you by, obviously, elitefts.com. So what I thought I would do a little bit differently here in the beginning of this one is to actually tell you what specials we have going on currently. Right now, if you buy 2 light bands, you get a free mini band. I believe that works up to 10 times. 11? I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
You can try it, though.
But either way, buy the bands, right? The other specials that we have going on, we've been trying to get rid of these plates that we bought during the pandemic, which has been sitting here for how long now? Well, hell, the pandemic's never going to stop. So it started, 25 years ago.
Yeah, right.
Anyhow, we're selling the plates. We're not selling. We're getting rid of the plates for 40% off.
They're good plates.
They're good plates. They're good plates. Problem with that is we just, when we purchased them, nobody could get plates. And I needed my salespeople to have plates because they're quoting out home gyms and stuff like that. So it's like, fuck it. We're going to pay whatever we have to pay because we're losing orders, of all that. Problem was we paid retail for the plates, right? So now we got to get rid of the damn thing. So they're still out there. I don't know how many are left, but there's still some that are out there. I believe there's free domestic shipping on the power bars. The fat bar giveaway that we have going on is those winners are going to be announced yesterday. I think we had like 2,000 people repost that. Mm-hmm. But the part that I think people missed is we have 10 of those sitting out in the warehouse that are also on sale for $50 off. Almost said $50. That would be like, oh, Dave, man, that's a hell of a deal. And free domestic shipping. Mm-hmm. So those are out there to snag as well. And there's another promotion we have going on right now that I completely forgot about. But aside from that, the hoodie sale. Damn. 20% off hoods and long sleeve tees, and obviously buy the limited edition wear. Is this a huge sales pitch before the podcast?
Yeah.
Of course it is, because that's how we're able to give you guys the content. Unlike our competitors that use content for marketing, we use our product sales to produce the content. So we appreciate your support, like, share, do whatever you're supposed to do. And that's all I have for this. And we are on with the show. Today we have, Sam is here. Present. Well, it's there's been, this is episode 95.
Yes, it is.
So there's been 3 episodes that if those are listening or watching on YouTube, you're going to be, wait a minute, like where'd the other ones go? Mm-hmm. We still push these out through the podcast network thing, mm-hmm. right? So this is 95, and we also have Matt Mills and Brittany Diamond, right? Mm-hmm. Say that right? Okay. So they were out doing content yesterday. Unfortunately, I was trying to find new items to sell yesterday, so I missed you guys. So we'll talk about what you did yesterday and kind of go from there. But that's what we have. So Beautiful. Let's roll.
Yeah, yesterday we spent a lot of time working on I think we set a PR for videos in a day.
13 videos?
13 videos yesterday, which was awesome.
Time went by fast, though.
Yeah, you blinked and it was 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Matt Mills has been a writer for Elite FTS for, we just talked about it, 5 years.
5, maybe 6.
5, maybe 6 years as a columnist for Elite FTS. Mm-hmm. All of his articles have done very, very well. He's one of our most popular writers on the site, which is
still surprising to hear, but
yeah, which is awesome. You. He looks like a superhero. Big comic book fan, as always. Yep. You also run Lightning Fitness out of South Windsor, Connecticut, correct?
I do.
And that's in one of the largest gyms in the area.
Yeah, well, we have 16,000 square feet now. We're soon to have 27,000 square feet. So we might be the largest, actually.
Holy shit.
At least the one that has powerlifting and strongman equipment in it.
Everything.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, we really specialize in strongman, powerlifting, bodybuilding, Olympic lifting, and soon to be MMA.
Oh, that's unbelievable. And we're going to actually dive into that a little bit deeper later on, but I want to introduce Brittany Diamond as well. Professional strong woman, right?
Correct.
Bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Overall bad motherfucker.
That, yeah.
That's right.
Hey, if you compete in it, you can call yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
So what's your story? What brought you here to Elite FTS?
So it's funny, and I'm so happy I'm doing this with Matt. So Matt has been a huge don't really like the term role model, but I'll start with the story. So Matt and I, what was it, a year ago, we celebrated 10 years of friendship on Facebook.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So I fell in love with lifting pretty much in middle school when I wanted to grow an upper body. So I was always fascinated. I worked at the Cape Ann YMCA. I was always fascinated learning how to get fast for track. And then I finally had a lifting coach in college. I went to college as a rower. I did not like rowing. I just did it to earn a scholarship. It was in college that I stumbled upon Matt's Facebook, and he was running a strongman workshop. So I literally just called him, and he answered, and I was like, hi, I saw you're doing this workshop. I'm in college. I love lifting. Can you tell me more about it? And he was like, yeah, you can come down. I was like, all right, I practiced that day. I don't know if I can, but he just spent, I'll never forget, I was in a TJ Maxx parking lot in Rhode Island, and I got off the phone, and I was like, this is the coolest sport. This person's so nice. And I was really attracted to his style of training. I remember I saw pictures of him and his now wife, Tasha, and I was like, wow, they're both in really good shape, and Matt is so strong. And I'm just going to be very blunt. When I was just getting involved in the strength world, I didn't like that no one really looked athletic or looked like they lifted, because I always wanted to look the part too. So kind of from there, I just always read Matt's posts, Matt's stuff. And then during my junior year of college, I did TPS, Boston's Strongest, and the rest was pretty much history. I just wanted to make my life how to become strong and help others become strong.
That's awesome. And you're a coach as well, right?
I am.
Very nice. Now, Matt, you have been a professional strongman, right? You are now doing bodybuilding as well. When did you get into strongman? When was that first sort of contest?
Long time ago. I think my first contest was 2008. And I was doing powerlifting at the time. And how I got into powerlifting was I read an article on elitefts saying, hey, here's what you do if you want to compete in powerlifting for the first time. And I was like, cool, I want to do this. I actually thought about doing bodybuilding back then, but it just didn't excite me. I wanted to go out and do something like lift, getting on stage didn't really excite me back then. So I did powerlifting, which I enjoyed. And then someone there was like, hey, you would do really well at strongman. I was like, I would love to, but like, where do I even go for this? So they pointed me in the direction of a competition that was local. And I was like, yep, sign me up. And I didn't have any equipment then. I just had a rack, dumbbells, and some med balls. So I just jumped to a strongman show and just had a blast learning what I was doing, get my ass kicked. And from there, like Britt said, you're the first one. You're like, oh, I'm hooked on this. This is what I want to do.
Fun fact, you were actually the head judge for my first strongman contest I've ever done.
Oh, that was your first?
That was my very first one.
Top Strength?
No. That was...
I have a terrible memory.
No,
so.
Before that, years before that. Before I even worked with you in
What
the
show
slightest.
is it?
Yeah, so what show?
Oh shit! It was in Connecticut. It was right down the road. It was, what is it, like a jiu-jitsu place or something?
Oh, yeah, Matt.
Yeah.
He mainly does a jiu-jitsu MMA type place now.
Yes. So you were the head judge there, and
Yep.
I was my first novice competition ever, and there was an axle clean and press, and I cleaned it so aggressively terrible that I heard you audibly go, whoa. And I thought I was going to hurt myself, but I just kept going, and you were just fucking staring at me, trying not to laugh the entire time.
You see some wacky stuff when people try to continental an axle.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. So you've both done powerlifting as well, right?
Yep.
So let's hear some of these numbers. Let's see some of the...
Yeah,
what
powerlifting,
we're doing.
I always kind of consider myself like a part-time powerlifter. I never really trained for powerlifting for a long time. It was always like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, like, I'll do a powerlifting meet. It was always in between strongman. My best total was 1835. Best squat, 665. Deadlift, 800. And bench, 460. Never in the same show, of course.
For sure.
Always different ones. It's hard putting it all together in one meet. I always wanted to hit 1900, but someday maybe.
Soon.
Brittany,
what about you?
So powerlifting for me was just a way. So I had total wrist reconstruction, and I was terrified to bench. So I was like, you know what? I'll just sign up for a powerlifting meet. That way I am forced to practice something I'm scared of. So my powerlifting meet wasn't great. I kind of actually want to do another one just to be competitive with it, because I just went into it so kind of like, all right, let me just figure out what I can still do. So it was cool because I won best lifter, and I won that day. And I actually had cut weight for it, which I know isn't the smartest for your first competition. However, at the time I was trying to do bodybuilding, and I just wanted the challenge of cutting too. And it was fun. but I shouldn't have cut. So I'll do it again just to get some really good numbers, because right now I'm just kind of focused on overall strength again.
Yep, absolutely. And when did you turn pro in Strongman?
2017 in the Arnold.
Very nice. Very nice. So a lot of the videos that we went over yesterday, we talked about your training. We talked about, your thoughts on how to set up programs and like in terms of bodybuilding versus strength and all these things. One of the connections that you both have is, and actually everybody at the table has, is Josh Bryant, right? You wrote the book with him. You wrote
a chapter.
A chapter of the book for him. You've worked with Josh Bryant before.
Yes, and I've done some contribution for some of his books as well.
Awesome. And he was a part of Elite FTS for a while. And I've actually worked with Josh Bryant as well. And I noticed there is a certain amount of intensity that you both bring to your training as well, in terms of how to intensify sets, just in terms of the attitude going into your work sets. How did you guys, what kind of drew you to that style of training?
I talked to Vinny DeCenzo about it, and he said, Josh is absolutely crazy. His training is super, super difficult. I can only work with him for about 6 months at a time. And I was like, that is who I want to work with.
That's the guy I like.
Because I love to train. I love to train hard, like you just said. If you're not training with intensity, then what's the point, really? I mean, I do it because I want to do well in competitions, but I do it because I love to do it, too. So once he said that about Josh, I was like, yep, I'm hiring him.
So for me, I worked out at a small garage gym, Tate Barbell, which is now expanded. And it was just strongman for the most part, a couple powerlifters, but I had gone there right after college where I was an endurance athlete. So I was training strength, strongman, but I always went a little overboard. Like I'd be like, let's do finishers, let's do this. And people would be like, you're crazy. And I'm like, if I don't leave here wanting to die, like going into my car, then I don't feel like I got a good workout. I just brought the mentality. So Adam Pime, who was a powerlifter at the time, just started working with Josh, and he's like, Brittany, he's like, you need to read this book. I'm like, okay, what is it? He's like, it's No Frills Training from my now coach, Josh Bryant. You guys have the same mentality. So I read the book. Then it was funny because then Matt started programming with him almost at the same time. So I read his books for years, and I actually hired him as a present for someone else. And then I saw the programming, and I was like, all right, I'm going to work with him, because I, at that time, wasn't benching a lot and wanted to improve my overhead press. So I hired him, and I literally said, give me a big overhead press. That's all I care about.
Now, Dave, Josh was a contributor to the site?
For a long time.
For a long time.
Like a decade or more.
Yeah, so what
Go way back. What's that?
What kind of brought your attention to him initially? Besides his massive bench.
A teenager benched 600 pounds. He... Initially, the WPO is, it's changed a lot over the years. One of the first ones was in Orlando, and he was a guest lifter or lifting. I can't remember exactly how it was, but I mean, these are the strongest of the strong from all over the world. And there he is. And I was like, this dude's a fucking teenager. This is crazy ass strong. And then it was just a matter of him and his brother. His brother was a thrower. So his brother was super strong too. So that's what put him on the radar. And then I don't believe I spoke to him at that point. Over a period of time, he started to write a little bit more. And so he was brought on as I believe, an author, columnist, I don't know what we called it at the time. And then into the coaching role, I mean, way, way back from that. So, and then watching his evolution, progression, however you want to define it, from that, just the kid that loves to train to, where he is now, the author, the clientele, the books, I don't know if he has a PhD or not. I don't know what his education, it's a master's, I'm pretty sure. But just watching that whole evolution and the whole thing has been awesome. Some of the stuff you should be able to still find on the old archives, because he was answering questions. We got over 1 million fucking questions archived on the site. So I'm sure there's 50 to 100,000 that he answered.
That's crazy. And you're right. Like his programming is it's intense, because you would use some of those principles as well when I was working with you. And for those who don't know, Matt worked with me for Strongman for several years, and I don't think I've cursed your name more in the history of our.
That's what I like to hear.
our relationship. But no, it's cool. So one of the things that I actually wanted to touch into a little bit more is your gym, is the evolution of your gym? Because when I first met you, you had 2,500 square feet?
Yeah, we've had 5 locations. I think the first one you came to was 2,500 square feet.
And now you're at 27,000.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, pretty wild.
What was that?
Well, we
sort of
actually
progression like?
so it's been over 15 years now. Our first location was only 650 square feet. It was just a little office space. We were on the second floor of it was like an insurance company below us, and the landlord, I was like, hey, this is what we do. We make some noise, and she's like, oh yeah, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. We're like, okay. And it was super cheap, so like we didn't have anything when we first started. I had a really cheap squat rack, dumbbells, and med balls. That was it. And I'd come from a commercial gym, so some of my clients followed me over. It's the only way I survived was having the people to come with me. We were there for a year, and somehow we made it out of that first year, moved to a little bit of a bigger spot that was 850 square feet down the road. There for 2 more years, then moved to that spot that was 2,500. So I've gone from just one-on-one training to now what I do now is small group training, and then we also have like a regular gym now where you can come in and do whatever you want. So having that change from one-on-one to group training is pretty much what saved my gym, because there's so many times where we almost closed down, very close to closing down many times. So we were there for the 2,500 square foot place where you came, and then pretty soon after that it was 7,000, and then we blew a wall out. It was 12,000, and then a year ago we moved to a spot that was 16,000, and now we're gonna knock another wall out and be 27,000. So it's been a really cool progression of things, and the gym we have now I never would have dreamed we would have when I first started.
Now, how did you even start with this process? Like, did you have I know you had minimal equipment to
It
start.
wasn't even my idea.
No?
So I got my master's degree at UConn. I was working with the strength coaches there, helping them out. And my plan was to be a strength coach for college and then maybe the pros one day. And the strength coaches there were just, they just seemed not happy, just very tired all the time, not very healthy because of the work schedule. So I remember talking to one time, and she was like, yeah, we just don't have any time to train. We're always traveling. If we have time to train, it's like maybe an hour if we're lucky. And I was like, oh, that's not going to work for me. Like I got to train. Like, I mean, I love to help people. It's why I do this, but like, I got to be able to do it myself. If I don't, I'm not going to be a very good person. So my manager at the gym I was working at, the commercial gym I was at, was like, hey, we should start our own studio. And I was like, I don't know. That sounds kind of risky. He goes, no, we're going to make so much money. It's going to be easy.
It's so funny hearing you say studio now, knowing the gym that you have.
Yeah,
I would never be like, yeah, it's a studio.
I wish I had pictures of the first spot. But it was just funny. I remember him saying, we're going to make hand over fist cash. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. This would be great. We're going to make so much money. And we were so broke. Like, we barely made it by that first show, like I said. But you know, if it wasn't for him, I would have never started the gym. The name of the gym was actually his idea. It was a great guy, and he came up with that name. And I actually never liked the name Lightning Fitness. I actually want to change it later, but I was like, you know what, we're so established now and everyone knows the name. I was like, we'll just keep it. But yeah, but eventually he went off and did his own thing, and now the gym is just mine. But yeah, if it wasn't for him, wouldn't have had it.
Yeah, I mean, at what point do you realize like you need to expand? Like, because it got to a point with that 2,500 square feet is like you had, like if I looked at it, I'd be like, you have everything you need.
Yeah.
You know, like you've always been, and I mean this with nothing but respect, a total equipment whore.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what's always, and that's what got me into trouble business-wise was like, I got to keep buying stuff. Like something new comes out, I got to have that bar, I got to have that piece of equipment. And I always had that mentality, well, if I get this piece of equipment no one else has, people will keep coming. And they did eventually.
I wish more people felt that way.
That's why I've been a long-term customer for you guys. But yeah, so I kept wanting to have the best equipment that just no one else had, so people would want to come. And that it did work that way eventually. Now we're known for having everything, and we have the best equipment for whatever sport you want to train for. But yeah, for knowing to expand, it's a risk. It should be a calculated risk, but it always is. Even with us, we're going 27,000 because we have an area behind us that no one's ever going to take, so I got a great deal on it. But I'm still pretty nervous about it. Like, we have a very busy gym. This past year, we blew up quite a bit. But I'm still like, ooh, all right, more rent, more electricity, grounds fees, this and that. It's still a risk, but I mean, you got to do the numbers and make sure it's going to work. But I took some risks that I probably shouldn't have when I was younger, just not knowing how to run a business. Be like, screw it, it'll work out. I'm stubborn enough to keep this going.
Yeah, and it's funny to see because, like you had said, you would always had the equipment that everybody else wanted, and like you said, it may not have been the time or place to actually buy it. But that was actually one of the first ways that I was able to use Elite FTS equipment was at your gym, because I was looking around other gyms in New England and I was like, there's nothing like this, right? But it's cool to see your growth and your transition from smaller space to bigger and bigger and bigger. And you've stayed consistent with who you are, what your gym stands for, the values that your gym has, the type of clientele that you work with, you know, the no bullshit attitude, like of you running your gym, which if anybody follows Matt on Instagram, he has been pretty famous in doing the, if you don't re-rack your weights, I'm just going to charge your account.
I'd like to think I started that trend because other gyms do it now.
Yeah,
I think you did.
I'm not sure if I was.
I'm going to say you did.
I really think you might have.
Yeah, I didn't see anyone else do it. So what happened was I came into my gym one day and there was 8 racks and machines loaded with plates, and I was so pissed because I was posting about it like, "Hey guys, you got to rack your weights," and it wasn't as bad as a commercial gym. Like you go to a commercial gym, there's just shit everywhere, weights everywhere, and that always drove me crazy. So at mine, it would happen, and I used to do burpees per pound, which would suck. Right. You know, one guy left out like 300 pounds on something, and I was like, oh, 300 burpees. And he did them. He videoed the whole thing, and like, but people would kind of make a joke out of it. Like, oh, I got to do my burpees, left my weights out. And then I came in that day and it was 8 things. And I was like, nope, fuck that. I was like, I'm charging you assholes. And it was $20. And then people were kind of like, okay, Matt, yeah, sure. And I have cameras everywhere. I can zoom in on everything, night vision, whatever. And then people kept doing it, and I was like, boom. And I have their credit card. Everything's on an automatic, credit card charge. So I would find them like, yep, $20. And they're like, oh shit, he's serious. And then it was like you walk around like, oh, everything's put away, exactly organized where it should be. Occasionally, someone does leave their weights out. The more people we get, the more it happens. But yeah, it's a easy way for me to make more money and buy more equipment with. So.
Well, at this point, anybody that comes in, they know that is part of the agreement when they sign up.
I have rules. I have a whole rule sheet. That's rule number 1. You leave your weights out. You make a mess. Like, let's say you spill your drink somewhere and just leave it like an asshole. Like, all right, $30. Yeah, I mean, it's just act like an adult. Clean up after yourself. It's not hard. I mean, some people do forget. They're in a rush and they leave weights out. I mean, I still charge them, but I get it.
You have to. I mean, there's 2 ways to look at it. Like sometimes somebody, say you're training, right? And your top set just fucking crushes you and you tweak your knee or whatever. You're like, fuck. I can see that, but I would also see that they're going to tear it down within the next day. Yeah. But that you can't say with what you're doing. I can do it here, right? But you can't say it with what you're doing because then you'd have to make that same exception for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
if someone gets hurt doing a lift and then it's like, all right, like, hey, we'll take care of it. Like, I'm not gonna expect you to limp around and put the plates back. We'll take care of it for you.
Yeah, but 90% of the time, it's just
someone leaving their weights out, and I'll see them, and I'm like watching the video. I'm like, come on, you're right there. You're looking at it. Put it away. And they walk off. I'm like, ugh. I've had people turn around and come back to the gym. Like, so they've like, did I leave my weights out? Oh, and they turn around and come back. Or they'll text me. They'll be like, hey, check this machine. Did I leave my weights out? I'm like, no, you're good. Oh, okay.
You know, what's funny about all this is when I started training, it was obviously forever ago. So gyms were different, like hardcore gyms, however you would call it. I don't think there were any soft gyms, right? There was like every gym was like a bodybuilding, powerlifting type gym, but then you had the commercial gyms, which they're so different, where people would get pissed if you would go in and there was not a fucking plate on each side of the bench. Or the deadlift was just laying on the platform without a plate on it. It's like, who the fuck took the plate off, right? Because the last thing you want to, or the same on the squat, there was like a 45 on every bar, pretty much everywhere. And if it wasn't there, you're like, who the fuck? And so look at how far that, you know what I'm saying? How far it's come. Like on the leg press, there's 2 plates or whatever would have to be on it. Because who's going to use no plates? Yep. It's like, who the fuck now I got to go all the way over there and grab it. Like the deadlift's the worst, putting the 45 on first. It's worse than any other weight you're going to load.
Well, it's funny, when I was here yesterday training, I was like going to pull the weights back. Sam's like, I'll just leave them there. I'm like, okay, all right.
I know that felt weird. I actually have a confession about one time I didn't unrack something. So I'll never forget because I had like an anxiety attack. And it was because I grew up in gyms, like always seeing Matt stuff and Titan barbell where like, you put your weight away or you did not come back. So it was kind of like yesterday when I got that squat and I got really emotional and was so happy. So I've never been an early morning trainer, but I was prepping for Strongest Woman in the World and I had a really big deadlift day. and I had a flight at 11 a.m. in Providence. So I was like, okay, I'm going to train from this time to this time. And you know how training is. You always go a little over, especially if you get a big lift because you get so happy and you're just going to lay there for a few minutes. So I got a huge deadlift. It was the first time I had broke 450. So I was so excited. And I put my weights away for that, but then I had squats after, box squats. And I was like, oh shit, my flight is soon. I gotta go. And I asked someone, I'm like, can you please put this away? Can you please put this away? I'll pay you. I gotta run. Jumped in my Uber. No one unracked it for me. So I was so afraid I was gonna like get kicked out. So I remember I wrote like a long email, an apology. I Venmo'd the owner right away. Like I Venmo'd him $50, I'll never forget. And I didn't get kicked out, but I was just so, I remember I was on the flight and didn't even care if I missed it. I was like, I hope I can still train.
A gym that would kick you out, that's pretty serious.
I mean, I didn't think he would. It was Steve's gym. So I didn't think, so no one really put their weights away, but that was my thing at the gym. Like,
Well, he charges people now too.
now he does because of you, yeah.
Yeah.
So
But there was a gym, someone sent me the sign. I was in Ithaca, New York, and it was the first offense was $40, and then the second was $80 if you leave your weights out.
That's New York prices.
Yeah,
New York.
But then the third, you're kicked out. I was like, wow. I was like, if you want to keep leaving weights out of my gym, I'll keep charging you.
Yeah, it's easy
Don't
money,
matter, man.
right?
And I've had people I've charged 5-6 times. I feel horrible. I even messaged them like, hey, you've done this 5 times. Like, please.
Why do you
pay
feel
attention.
horrible? That's
Like, I'm
Well,
still
I
taking
still
your
feel
money.
like, I still feel bad about doing it, and they're always like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, how do you do that
I
many
know,
times?
how do you do that?
But,
Well, I think being a business owner, and Dave can probably attest to this as well, but like we were talking about it yesterday, the literal shit you have to deal with.
oh, you want to hear that
Owning
story?
a gym. They're like gross
yes.
gym
I
stories.
mean, I bet you've dealt with something like this before. So there was a day. It was about a month before my bodybuilding show, and so I wasn't really in the greatest mood.
Little hangry.
And so I go. So in my gym we have a single
heard that
private
one.
bathroom, and then we have a men's room that's full stalls and a women's room with full stalls and showers, whatever. So I go in the single bathroom, and I see a brown spot on the wall, and I just was like, that can't be what I think it is. Because it's like behind the toilet a little bit. I was like, I get closer. I'm like, it is. Okay. I'm like, how do you even do that? Like get it back there. So I'm like, okay. Like I'm pissed, but I'm like, whatever. I'm going to go. I scrub it off. I got to repaint the wall from scrubbing it and all that. I'm like, oh, whatever. All right. And then 2 hours later, I take the trash out. I pull the bag up and then puke falls out of the bag and goes all over my leg. All over my leg. And I'm like, motherfucker. Like I'm so pissed. So I just leave it on the floor on my leg. I go in my office. I'm like, oh, okay, calm down. I sit there for 10 minutes just getting it together. And then I finally go clean everything up and wipe it up. And people are walking by like, Matt, you okay? I'm like, don't talk to me. They're like, oh, okay. And I tell people what happened. They're like, oh my God. But it's just one of those days where I was like, this has to happen back to back and I'm already in a bad mood. But yeah, that's owning a gym. You deal with some interesting things.
Yeah, that's it. And it's so unfathomable. It's like humans are so gross.
I'm almost
It's like if
impressed
they
that the
can
person was
shit on
able
the
to
wall.
shoot it back there.
I was more impressed that you scrubbed so hard you had to repaint the wall.
I was so mad.
And now that's probably not the first time you've had to deal with gross.
Oh no, people
in your gym.
just shit and piss all over the toilet and scrub it and clean. I don't have a cleaning crew in my gym. I do everything myself. But that's one of the things that allows me to continue to upgrade things in my gym and buy new equipment all the time. I literally do everything, which I don't have a problem with. But yeah, when you walk in the bathroom sometimes, you're just like, oh my God, how do you even do that? Or how do you leave it like that? Or the urinals, there's piss puddles all over the floor. I'm like, God, it's a urinal. Just walk closer. Stand closer. It's not difficult.
You're not that big, man.
Like, why? Yeah, they're like, I don't know. Yeah.
Now, Brittany, you were saying that you had some pretty gnarly gym stories in your travels.
Yeah, so, I'm grateful that I was able to check out so many gyms in my travel and learn to train while traveling. But it was in the pinnacle of my strongwoman career that I was managing the whole Northeast I worked in medical sales at the time. So I was flying everywhere, going to different gyms. And I was never a shy person at all. I could talk to anyone. But I started to get, I couldn't understand when girls especially would talk about, gym anxiety. I'm like, just go in there and do your thing. Just own it. But I started to get gym anxiety when all of a sudden I'd be training pretty intensely. And I sometimes had to go to an LA Fitness. And I've talked to Matt about this because I would post what would happen. People during my set would come up and touch me and spot me when I didn't need one, or say things or film me. I got really people would film me. Like I would see it happening and I'd go up to people and be like, did you just film me? And they'd be like, oh yeah, I just Snapchatted to my friends. Like, that's really cool. You can do that. And it would just make me very uncomfortable because here I am as an athlete. Like, this is my job. I'm training for something. I just wanted to be, it was that moment in time. Like, I remember like, I wish I was invisible. And I started to become almost self-conscious of how much I could lift and like what I looked like because I just felt like I was always on display. And it was fine. When I went to strength gyms, it was awesome. And that's what I became really passionate about telling people because so many times people are afraid when they want to get into lifting to go to a hardcore gym. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, absolutely not. People there will want to help you be stronger. As long as you're not an asshole and you're there to train, they will help you. You go to a commercial gym and you try to get strong, all of a sudden there's 25 bros coming up to you. I'll never forget, I was a very strong squatter at the time and I was deloading. It was LA Fitness and I was doing 245. My rep scheme was 4 times, I think it was like 4 times 5, but I wanted to get in a little more reps. So, which, you know, I wasn't the smartest trainer then. I was always going a little overboard. And some guy in the middle of my back squat runs up to me, and there's mirrors so I could see, and just like picks me up. And I'm like, what are you doing? Don't touch me. And he's like, you were going to drop that. And I literally was like, bro, this is 60% of my max, okay? Back off.
Jeez.
So.
Now, that's actually a good segue. Matt, you have always had a high standard for the people at your gym, right? In terms of codes of conduct. Like, I've heard you say, like, if you say something inappropriate to a woman in my gym, I'll fucking kill you. Like,
yeah, I've kicked plenty. I hate to even say it, but it's always guys. I have never had a problem with women saying inappropriate things or doing anything like that. It's always guys. Yeah, I've kicked a guy out for taking a picture of a girl when she was working out without her permission, obviously. Yeah, saying inappropriate things. But people, it's in my rules. I have a set of rules that everyone reads through when they sign up. The last one is no lewd conduct, no inappropriate comments, no staring, no pictures or videos of other members while they're working out. So, and I go over those things and I'll say, hey, I don't mess around with this stuff. Like, if you do any of these things, I kick you out. And then, you know, some of the guys are like, what if the girl's hitting on me? And I'm like, I'm not saying you can't, like, ask a girl out or anything, but, like, if she says no once, leave it alone.
And we all know that she's not hitting on you.
Yeah, it doesn't. I'm like, you know, well, we've had people who've met in my gym and they've gotten married, which is great. But yeah, when you have the guy that just kind of goes and hits on every girl in the gym, it's like, you're not here for that.
Now, you had mentioned in strength gyms, it doesn't happen nearly, like, that's just not the same sort of environment. And I remember Dave telling stories about how in his gym history, he's had people as training partners have such a different background and different walks of life, being able to kind of get along in a gym setting, right? Do you think that that's changing now, or do you think? Of
course I do.
Yeah.
I think it's changing because there's more options, right? So even a decade ago, there might be 1 strength gym, maybe 2 per city. Now there's 15 or 20. Not counting the people that have their little crews in their 2-car garage or whatever it's going to be. So if I use my time at Westside as an example, there was Westside, and that was it. Outside of that, there was a dude that had a bunch of ADFPA lifters in his basement. That was it. So if it didn't work out, you still wanted to power lift, you're moving to Cleveland. You know, you're going to Black's Health World, you're going somewhere else. There just wasn't anywhere else. So you if you love the sport and that's what you wanted to do, you've got along with everybody that's in there. If you like them or don't like them, hell, you're all there for the same reason. Yeah. So there is that you can lean into. You can hate everything about what they stand for and what they do, but at least you all agree you're here to get a stronger bench, squat, and deadlift. So let's just agree on that and move forward. Where now, just hell, in Columbus, I bet there's 50, right? So now one little disagreement, it's like, fuck it, I'm out of here. Taking my belt, going somewhere else, right? And it's like, okay, well, first off, you know, I don't know how productive this is for life skills because you have to deal with people that you don't always agree with on everything.
Right.
And that seems to be embraced now, you know, so then they'll leave. Or if one person can take more than one with them. So sometimes it's just the one. Sometimes it may be the person that is, I don't want to say like a ringleader. I don't know what to really call that. But sometimes that one person going someplace else means 6 other people are going too, which can completely disrupt a whole flow of a crew that might be, say, 10 people, 12 people kind of all at the same time. And now half are gone.
Yeah.
You know, just because of one stupid thing, which is usually a really, really stupid thing.
Yeah.
So there's good and bad, right? Where sometimes you don't want to be around, you know what I'm saying? So
Oh, for sure.
yeah,
Sometimes the environment's very
yeah. Sometimes it's toxic and you just don't want to be in it anyhow. Where before, you know, there were no options. It's like, fuck, I guess I need to find a different city to go to, or now I need to drive another 3.5 hours to train, you know, each time. So there's pros and cons with it.
Yeah, Matt, have you seen, obviously you've been able to build, I feel like you've had the same sort of training crew for years, your closer group of
we have a really great environment. I haven't experienced anyone, I know what you mean, Dave, when you say like, you know, one guy leaves and a couple of guys go. I think just because where I am, we're really the only gym that has, like I said, everything. There's other gyms in Connecticut, but you're going to be driving a bit further. So usually when there's some kind of a problem and I say, hey, cut the shit or you're out of here, it's usually like, okay. And if it continues and that person's gone, that's people are just kind of like, oh, well, he was a really negative impact in the gym anyway, and now the gym is better off for it.
Yeah.
You know, one thing in creating that kind of environment, a positive environment, is getting rid of those people who bring everyone else down, who keep causing issues.
And in fairness to a lot of those people too, they may not even know, right? So then when you bring it to their attention, they'll be like, fuck, I didn't know that.
They feel horrible about it.
Yes, exactly.
And then it's cool after.
Yep.
And
It's like the ones that stink. Right? You're always afraid to tell them you smell like shit.
I got to tell people, yeah.
But you're doing them a favor by letting them know because nobody else is letting them know.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to do it.
When you, especially Strongman and Powerlifting, you got the knee sleeves and everything. And those things stink after a while. You got to wash them. And there's times where I'm like, hey, man, you stink. And they're like, I do? And I got girls that were squatting. They're like, oh, my God, I can't even squat next to them. So I'll be like, hey, man. He's like, oh, okay, thanks.
Now, Brittany, you were having more of a traveling, like going from different gyms and gyms and gyms.
Yeah.
From that sort of perspective, like you normally train alone, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So in terms of a training crew, it's a very different thing for you than it is for other people.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that I've used it to my benefit because I've learned how to, you know, there's so many people and I want to say it's soft, but like I'll see it now because I'm not even that old and I've been training, you know, intensely. I'll be 30 soon. So you could say I'm young, which I think I am, but you know, there's so many people that are like, oh, I didn't get a good night's sleep. I was doing this. I forgot a meal. I did this. And I didn't have my training partner. I didn't have a spot. And I'm like, I just have no sympathy because I'm like, if you want it, if you love training, suck it up. It doesn't matter. You're not thinking about the meal you missed or whatever. You're thinking about the task at hand, which is lifting. So I've used that to my benefit. But it's also been a great learning experience. I think it's made me a good coach because I've seen what works, what doesn't. I've studied different gym environments, and there's a trend usually. Usually the strongest people go to where they're not the strongest because, you know, there's a learning aspect involved. And the gyms that have huge egos, I've noticed that there's a lot of burnout and injuries, and they're not always very well liked in the industry because of things they do. So it's been a very good learning experience. I'm thankful for it. You know, it was tough when I was working nights, trying to train in the day and establish my own business, but I couldn't do it now. I do admit I need sleep now. So, but I'm glad I had that experience when I was so young.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a good point that you make in terms of the strongest people, right? I think of Lightning Fitness as having some of the strongest people, not just in New England, but like in the country and in their own respective, you know, sports. Who are some of the athletes that you have at your gym?
Yeah, it's just one of those things that if you build it, they will come. I mean, a lot of them, they developed at my gym, like Rob Kearney, who is competing in World's Strongest Man. He's going to be competing at the Arnold on the main stage with the big boys next month.
Which is so funny because he was the same body weight as me when I started.
Yeah.
And he was at the same contest with Corey that I was like, what the And all of a sudden now he's on that stage.
Well, it's funny. Some people think Rob just all of a sudden came out, and I was like, I think Rob's 30, and he's been competing in Strongman as long as I have. My first show was his first show.
Yep.
That's where we met. And we got together like, hey, man, I got some Strongman stuff. Like, let's get together on Saturdays. And then Carlos Reyes, who was doing the Strongman at the time too, we met him at a show, and then we're like, hey, let's get together. So me, Carlos, and Rob would train every Saturday. And that was when we were nobody. We weren't pros yet or anything, just doing local shows. And we went to all the local shows in New York, in Mass, Rhode Island, Connecticut, wherever, and competed at so many of them together. And then that's kind of how we got our name. Like, we would go out there and compete so much where other people would be like, hey, where's your gym? We haven't heard of that. What do you have there? Oh, we got a log, we got a yoke, we got farmers. Because at that time, there were no gyms that had those things. It was just some people in their garages, like Dave said, like just had some equipment and they get together in a driveway. So at my gym was like, we had that equipment. You could train it inside when it wasn't, when it was raining and snowing, you could come inside and do these things. So we started building a crew back then and all training. And then we had some powerlifting stuff, and I did a meet, and people were like, oh, where's your gym? I'm like, oh, it's in South Windsor. So me going out there and competing like that is what got those people together and built that environment and got that crew together. And then like Rob's just someone who just, I used to beat Rob all the time when we were younger. Like he was always a little bit behind me, but I'd always get him though.
Yeah.
And then, he just started kicking my ass. And then all of a sudden he was pressing 400 pounds on the log like nothing. Yeah.
And he's been working with Poundstone, right?
He worked. He worked with Mike Jenkins first,
right.
Until Mike sadly passed, and then he worked with Poundstone. And who is Rob working with currently right now? He was working with Terry Rady for a bit. He's actually, I'm gonna put it out here right now. He's gonna start working with me after the Arnold for bodybuilding, not to compete. He wants to look like a bodybuilder. I was like, all right. And get you lean and mean after this.
Now, you've always held an athletic aesthetic, right? Regardless of what you were competing in, you've always looked like an athlete, right? Do you think that has helped with your business growth and in terms of building a gym and, like looking like you do the thing?
You have to look the part. Yeah, you absolutely have to look the part. I mean, I always loved bodybuilding when I was younger. I always trained like a bodybuilder, read all the magazines, and when I got into powerlifting and strongman, like Britt said, like I never wanted to just be like just big and fat and strong.
Yeah.
I wanted to be lean and strong. So I always wanted to have that look of a bodybuilder. I always want to take pride in that. But plus I trained a lot of people who wanted to lose weight. Your average person just wanted to look better, feel better, and get leaner. So if I was just a big, massive guy with a big belly, they're not going to probably want to listen to me, right? You got to walk the walk too. And sadly, a lot of trainers don't. That when I worked at a commercial gym for quite some time before I started Lightning, and a lot of them would be eating McDonald's back there and then training somebody who wants to lose weight. And I'm like, guys, you're an embarrassment. People are laughing at you. Like, you want to eat McDonald's, go hide in your car or something. You know what I mean? You can't be telling someone, eat your protein and vegetables while you're eating a cheeseburger and fries, right?
Right.
I'm not saying you can't do those things like once in a while, but you can't be doing that openly in the gym where you're trying to get people to sign up for memberships with you to train, right? So I always wanted to look that part, and just even if I wasn't a trainer or a business person, I just wanted to look like a superhero. I was like, that's what got me into training. I read comic books. I would read Batman, Superman. Batman's training in the Bat Cave and doing everything, and I'm like, man, I want to look like Batman. I want to look like that. So that's what really got me into all that.
And for those who don't know, like you don't have like an off season for your food, for your nutrition. Like you eat the same way pretty much throughout the whole year.
Yeah, it's just more or less. It depends what I'm doing. Like my heaviest, I was 284 for the last time I competed at the Arnold's.
Like 6'1"?
6'1", yep, 284. That was my heavy. I wanted to see 300 on the scale just for the hell of it. But when I was 284, I was like, oh, this is hard moving around, putting my shoes on. Like, I'm already red in the face. And I do cardio and everything else, but I'm like, it's a lot of weight. And so after that show, I cut back down. That was like, all right, time for a bodybuilding show. And so I competed at Strongman at 231. So I'd always fluctuate. I'd be at the most 280 or so. Then I'd get down to 231 for a Strongman show.
Your cuts were always, you had big cuts.
Yeah. Looking back, it wasn't the smartest thing. I mean, my biggest one I did was in 8 weeks, I went from 270 to 231. And it was just kind of to prove I could do it.
Yeah.
And I made weight and did it, but then I had a terrible show. I just didn't recover. It was too much. I mean, I made weight, it was cool, but then like the next day I was like, man, I'm just not recovered from that weight cut.
Yeah, and that was one of the last times you competed at 231?
Yeah. After that, I was like, I'm going heavyweight.
It was funny. So we competed at the same show. You were in the pro division in North Carolina. Remember it was at the Europa?
Yeah, it was it was North or South Carolina. I don't remember which one.
Yeah, it was North Carolina.
It was at the first like OSG basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And we went food shopping. And at the time, I was just like, I'm just going to fucking pick up some Oreos. So I'm like, I'm in the Oreo aisle, and I'm like, oh, Matt's not here. And then you're like looking at for like chicken and rice and shit. And I was like, well, I think I'm going to change my diet for today.
Well, for me, I know some people who they'll make weight and they eat a bunch of junk all day.
Yeah.
And their stomachs are fine the next day. And if you've done that before, you know your body's okay with it, cool, keep doing it. For me, if I eat any like junk food or if I eat any greasy food, the next day I'm a mess. And I've made this mistake before where I've made weight. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go out into a restaurant. I'm going to have some dessert and this and that. Then the next day, when I'm trying to move some heavy weight, it's not pretty. So I learned the hard way where it's like, all right, I got to eat exactly how I train. Don't change a thing. I know my stomach's okay with these things. After the show, screw it. Have whatever you want. It doesn't matter then. But trying to move some heavyweight and strongman to powerlifting with an upset stomach, that is bad news.
No, yeah, that's no good. So what does your training look like now?
Yeah, now it's strictly bodybuilding. That's my next thing I'm going to be doing, but I've been incorporating strongman events just because I really missed them. And I was like, you know what? I really want to do some log, some yoke farmers, things like that. Events that are less likely to be injured. So I'm just not going to do stones right now.
Right.
You know, certain events like that, I just want to keep out. So, but moving events, I always felt better moving with some weight, whether it's farmers or yoke or carrying some weight. I always felt better conditioning doing those things.
And we did a video on that, and Brittany, you had some input on that as well, is strongman movements specifically done for bodybuilding, and you picked a very particular one.
Yeah, arm over arm.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah, so I had done it last Friday because I never took strongman training out, just like Matt said, except for the ones that obviously I get injured on. So last Friday I was supposed to do, excuse me, like some type of arm finisher or whatever. I was like, I'm just going to bang it out with arm over arm pull. And I was like, that was way more than any fat grips, any bicep exercise, anything. And it was fun as hell. So.
And now you said farmers and log.
Yep. Yeah, log, just the one motions, it's my favorite thing to do. So, and what's better than doing some high rep log one motions to get you in better conditioning and pack some mass on? Yeah.
Fucking anything
it kicks
is better
your
than
ass,
that?
but I just always love those. So it was like a Monday where I was doing my chest rolls and tricep workout. I'm like, I'm going to start with some one motions. And I was doing I missed these. I hadn't done them in over a year.
And now, Dave, for your, when you were in your lean phase, kind of doing the bodybuilding-esque training, you always incorporate some different style of exercises and kind of spice things up a little bit too. Like I've noticed that even training for the weekends is like, I see some of the things that you do and like just kind of how you attack.
During a bodybuilding thing?
Yeah.
It's definitely phasic, yes. And so there's different periods of time where like the arm over arm and some of the things that, like a log press, a lot of things that you're talking about there, I see those a little bit differently than other people would. I see it as concentric only, right? So there's an arm over arm, there's no eccentric, right? A log press, there's essentially no eccentric. It's up, dropping it down, right? So there's certain, putting in concentric only is just it's gonna pump more blood into there, right? And it's gonna not break down as much muscle tissue. So the recovery demands are going to be less. The oxygen demands are going to be higher. So you're moving more oxygen, more nutrients throughout the system. So those have I don't do those things, but I will do things that are concentric only in nature, you know, to build work capacity for one thing. Because when you peak as a strength athlete, that peak is your work capacity at that point is low, right? Because you just peaked everything. Right. So not only did you just peak everything, but as you get to the peak, you pull accessories and all the stuff. Then you deload the week before, sometimes 10 days before. Then you might take off the week after. So in all reality, your competition was one training session in the last 3 weeks. Right. So there's a lot of training that went in there, but there's also a lot of detraining associated with that. So then coming back into that, the work capacity has to be increased back to be able to start actually training hard. So different ways to go about doing it. I use reps more than anything.
Yeah.
Just easy. So say start at 250 reps per training session and move it up over a period of time. Get to a certain point, say 400, 450. Now keep it there, but now let's start training hard. You know, so the reps getting up there, it could be concentric only, it could be forward sled dragging, it could be, you know, shit like that, shoulders for sleds, stuff, that crap. It's terrible, it's boring.
Yeah.
But to me, it's vital and it's necessary because you beat yourself to hell to be able to peak for that strength event. Keep in mind, there's only one session over a 3-week period as well. And then most people are like, oh, I took the week off, I'm going to go and start hitting bodybuilding hard, right? So they go from a volume of, on a scale of 1 to 10, like 1 to fucking 10.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, I can't figure. And then they're still having.
That's been me.
Yeah. Then they haven't, you know what I'm saying? But even with that, they haven't, I don't want to say periodized their nutrition, but they're still they ate like a strength athlete, which not saying that's good, not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's more, right? Where especially during the last peaking period, unless you're cutting weight, you're in a calorie surplus because recovery is everything, especially when everything's falling apart, which is at the end. And so then after, like, fuck it, I just want to eat normal food, right? Now, I agree with what Matt said 100%. You never want to eat anything different the day before or the day of that's just insanely stupid. But afterwards, you're like, man, I really want stupid shit, right? Even if you're not even dieting, it's like fucking Arby's, and you ain't ate Arby's in 35 years. It's like, man, I gotta have that. And so that's still not even in line, because when they start coming back during that phase, their diet's not where it needs to be either. It takes a few weeks to get that kind of structured and back. So I don't know if I really answered that, but
No,
it's just
absolutely.
phasic.
For sure. And that's something I want you both to touch on as well, because you have been multi-sport athletes, right? You started with track. Was it track?
Track, yeah. And just like Matt, though, I was from a very young age obsessed with bodybuilding. Like, that's what I thought I was going to do.
Yeah. And how do you, especially for Matt, right? Like, I've seen you do pro strong. I've seen your like literal physique morph. It almost looks like month to month. Sometimes it's like you were up to 280 and then you were down to 230 and you were all over the place. Like, how do you keep everything in line to match that goal? I mean, it doesn't seem like you would get bored with training. It doesn't seem like you would get bored with the diet.
I know some people who get bored with training, or like they say they're unmotivated. And there's times I'm unmotivated, of course, but overall, I love the train. I'm like, even when I shouldn't train, I'm going to train. Like, it's just what I love to do. But making weight and all those things, it just was, whenever I can just turn that switch on. Like, I have no problem, no cheat meals, chicken and rice and broccoli, whatever. I have zero problem doing that. So whenever I have a show coming up, like if it's bodybuilding or if I make weight for Strongman, or I'd be like 12 weeks out and I'm 260 or whatever, and I gotta be 231, 12 weeks out, I'll say, all right, on that Monday, boom, that's it. And that's it for me. And I can slowly start cutting my weight down. I have zero issue going somewhere, bringing my food with me and being that guy, being like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't have that.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't bother me whatsoever, because that competition that's everything to me. Like, being the best at strong at that time, that was my, like, I want to say my number one goal pretty much was to be the best I could possibly be. So, and nothing was going to get in my way. So having to eat a certain way, that was always easy to me.
Well, it's one of those things that, I mean, we ended up seeing it last night with Adam in terms of conditioning, right? In terms of his ability to look at Dave shaking his head. We had our training partner Adam out, and he was just doing higher reps. They weren't really high reps, just higher reps. And you could see systemically, he just could, like, it wasn't, his body was shutting down underneath a fairly low load, but for higher than 5 reps. And it was interesting to see how someone that was so good at the sport that he did and so peaked to shift that direction just a little bit into that conditioning realm, and it just went to shit. How do you guys keep up with the conditioning end of things enough to recover for a strongman show, for a bodybuilding show, for a strongman show? Like, right? Like, so, like, how do we maintain enough conditioning through the course of the year so you don't get to the point where it's like, oh fuck, starting fresh?
We should always keep it in. You know, don't take conditioning out. So I always did, even for powerlifting, I would still do sled drags, some steady state cardio, things like that. But whenever I would go from powerlifting to strongman, start moving with some heavier weights, I'd be like, "Ooh, okay, I forgot how hard this was." Like, I'd be getting my ass kicked in the beginning, of course. But you should never take those things out and just do. And if you're doing powerlifting, just don't do squat, bench, dead, some accessories, and call it a day. Like, you got to move a little bit too, right? So if you keep a little bit of that in, you're going to maintain it when you make the bigger switch to strongman, where you have to move with some weight now. It's still going to be a shock to your body, like, okay, this is different, but it won't be that big as opposed to you just doing static events or just static lifts.
So I've always been a huge believer in conditioning. Again, coming from an endurance background, I got a lot of hate. People were like, that is so stupid. You'd be so much stronger, just talking shit. But what I did, so after college, in college, I was doing a crazy amount of cardio. I'm talking like rowing 2,000 meters, cool down run being 5-7 miles, things like that. So when I made the switch into strongman in 2014, that was a huge, 360 in my training. I think I put on 20 pounds of muscle in about a year, which is the most I'd ever done. But people were like, that is so stupid. And then I was kind of like, well, you know what? I'm going to match it so that it's like a strongman event. So for example, most strongman events are 60 seconds. So like Matt was saying when he was doing the log clean and press, that was something I was always doing. And people were like, why are you working at that rep range? And I'm like, I feel like it is beneficial for strongman. And then people started to kind of shift when they saw me at a contest. If it was a 2-day contest, I wasn't dying. You know, I was able to last. And I've never lost a max distant event where you're gasping for air. You know, your VO2 max is being tested. And I honestly see conditioning, like lifting is fun. I see conditioning as a mental toughness aspect, especially if it's true. You know, if you're really testing yourself. Like, I had a question the other day about HIIT. I'm like, no one is actually doing HIIT.
Right.
No one. If you do it, you don't need to do like 45 minutes HIIT. Like, what is that?
Insane.
Like, that's not true. You would die. So.
Now, that's a good point that you brought up. It was almost a skill of conditioning, right?
Absolutely.
And Dave, when we were working with Adam last night, it was very clear that he's never had to push into that realm, because you and John used to always have those drag your fucking ass out of the gym training sessions that you had to build up to. But how much of that was, I mean, obviously it was physical, but there has to be a mental component to that.
With him, I would say it's all neural.
Yeah.
Because he's never done any bodybuilding type work. He doesn't know how to isolate the muscle. So what I'm trying to do, he's off season. So the meet's just over. So it's already doing there. We built the volume and now it's a hypertrophy phase. So we need to stimulate the muscle. And he's been a high level competitive powerlifter for a decade, which is great because when he squats, everything squats. His toes, his erectors, everything, bam, at the same time. It's synchronized, it's efficient, boom, it goes straight through. That's not bodybuilding. Bodybuilding, that's the last thing that you want to do. Bodybuilding, you want to isolate that muscle as much as you possibly can. So when he's doing things like a standing one leg curl, so I'm trying to find things that force the isolation. He's still finding ways to be able to get his lower back, his glutes, his calves, everything to work. And that's 100% what you want for the strength athlete when they are competing for the show. It's 100% what I don't want right now. I explain it kind of like a dragster, right? They go out, they drag, you need everything firing on all cylinders to get the fastest speed you possibly can. Every part has to work together. One part doesn't work right, dragster crashes and burns. Powerlifter, strength athlete has one part not working right, and it's before, boom, they tear a bicep, something falls off, right? But you can't fucking drag race every single day. At some point, you got to go into the shop. Right? When you go into the shop, what do? They take the fucking engine apart. They take all the pieces apart. They clean everything. They replace and fix the parts that aren't working anymore. They got to take it all out and lay it all down. I see that as muscle groups, bodybuilding type stuff. Okay, so now instead of the squat, now it's the hamstring, it's the quads, it's the adductors, wherever those weak points are. Let's isolate these. Let's fix what's not there. Any imbalance that's there is, I don't necessarily want to fix it because that could be why he's good, is that an imbalance. I don't want to create an imbalance which has entitled him to world records. That's stupid. But his ability to mentally connect with how the hamstring's supposed to feel when you flex it is not there. And it's frustrating, right? Because he's got zero bodybuilding background. So I've always trained with people that had bodybuilding backgrounds too, and meadows and different things. So you got to start learning and teaching him how to change body position to be able to feel it where I want him to feel it. So the standing leg curl, I wanted more tension behind the knee, because it's a vulnerable spot. So he has to change his body position. He needs to pull his toe up a little more. He needs to know what I'm trying to do with that to build that integrity of that joint. So with him, it's not, conditioning is definitely a part of it because he can't lay down the vape pen for more than 5 seconds. Yeah, that's definitely, I mean, that's a fucking challenge, but that's going to be a little bit easier to correct because now it is higher volume and it's more, I don't give a shit how long somebody takes between sets during strength blocks. They can be in here for 5 fucking hours. I don't give a shit. Just do the weight, get it. But now it's like, let's, and he likes to take his time. That's kicking it. That will fix his conditioning though, by taking the rest periods from 15 minutes per set, down to a couple. But this other part, trying to really connect with what the muscle's supposed to feel like, I don't know if we have the time to do that. I don't, we'll see. So it's going to have to pivot a little bit.
So what were some of the I guess the tools mentally that you and John would go into with those like conditioning, like heavy, like high rep sessions?
What for what part?
For in terms of when you guys were doing like the crazy high rep sets, and like where would you guys go mentally for those? I mean, those looked more mental than they were physical at times.
It's just in our DNA. I don't know. You know, it's just.
I've always wondered if you could teach someone that, because that's one thing that's kind of, it was almost hard for me to be a coach, and now I'm lucky that I can choose who my athletes are and people I work with, because if someone doesn't possess that mental toughness, I'm very impatient because I don't want to teach someone how to train hard. I feel like you either have it or you don't. And it would really, in college I had coaches, one had won bronze in 1992 for rowing. So she was an Olympic athlete. And my other coach had a military background. So I remember one day we were practicing, fire alarms were going off, people were puking. They said, "You get the fuck up off your rower right now. You lose your scholarship and you're not welcome back on the team." And ever since then, I've just trained with that mentality. But do you think you could teach them on that? What do you think?
I think you can push them to it. I don't think it matters who it is. You can push them and coach them and train them to do it. Now, if they're going to do it on their own, probably not. But the thing is that's a bigger question to be answered is it necessary, right? There's different levels of intensity we're talking about. So there's the level of intensity of, you know, training leg press really, really hard. And then there's that other level of, okay, on this last set, I don't give a fuck what we're going to do. We're going to keep this moving and it's going to go on straight for 5 minutes. So there's going to be iso holds, strip sets, up sets, down sets, force reps, all this. Is that necessary for growth? I'm going to say no. Is it necessary to make you stronger? No. You know, is it a challenge? Yes. Can that pertain to other things? Definitely. So you get what I'm saying? Like, yes, you have to train hard, but this other level of hard, it doesn't have to be done. That other level of hard, I just think becomes part of a meathead mentality that say you're sitting in the gym, man, you're just like, I wonder, and that's how all bad shit happens.
I wonder if
You're like, I wonder if I could squat 315 for 50 sets of 10, right? And then you're like, oh, that's stupid. But then sometimes it don't leave. You're like, no, wait a minute. Am I saying that's stupid because I'm scared to try? Then it starts. Then you're like, next thing you know, you're fucking doing it, right? You're 30 sets in, you're like, son of a bitch, this was a mistake. That I agree
with you. I think it's important. I always preface it with like, I know this isn't smart, but for me, that's just my personality and what I like to do. And I'm actually just learning now. And I was telling Sam and Matt, we were actually training that day did I look depressed that day? Did I not see myself?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I
was like, I'm just doing this because my whole life, I've been lifting for about like 15 years now. And I've always been so intense and I'll admit, I was like, maybe I just have great genetics. Maybe I'm just special because it never negatively impacted me until recently when I was dieting so severely. I'm like, oh my God, I need to turn it down a notch. And it was just, to me, I'm like, what's the point of living if you can't train hard? So I think it's different for every person.
Well, having that mentality can get you into trouble sometimes too,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
Like I know I've hurt myself many times where I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna do this anyway. Yeah. Even though I know I should back off or like something doesn't feel right. And I'm like, nope, I'm fine, fucking, I'm gonna do it anyway. And then I tear something, I'm like, well, that was stupid. Why did I listen?
Yeah, but a lot of times you didn't though, right? You're in the same situation you didn't. So it's with John and I, we just called it, we have to control our stupidity. Yeah. Like it's what we enjoy, it's fun. So it definitely has a point because training can be monotonous, especially if you're training for an event or a show or whatever it is. The process of what has to be done is monotonous and it's repetitive and it's the same thing. And so you have to spice it up to make it fun. So the challenge sets can do that. Doing exercises that may or may not make that much of a difference. But if all you did was what you had to do, you wouldn't like it. So the other thing spices that up, but you do need to control the stupidity because it can go, if you have to start recovering from those demands, then you're just making things even harder than what they should be.
That's why I want to challenge myself to powerlifting because I'll admit it, I've never trained purely for strength because I've done all this extra shit. Did it make me a great strongman competitor? Hell yeah, it did. But that's why I kind of want to, it'd be harder for me to truly do a block of powerlifting and not do anything extra but I want to challenge myself now that I'm a little more mature of an athlete and can, I've learning to take that down a notch. It's kind of the opposite of most people, has been very challenging for me. So kind of want to do that. See what happens, see how strong I can get.
With the stupidity, I'm biased because I come from the powerlifting background, but there's so much, in my opinion, there's so much less room for error because of the intensity zones that you're training in, 80, 90% zones. I mean, a couple reps higher in that intensity zone on 1 week, you could literally fuck up 2 weeks of training.
Oh, yeah.
Just on one extra set. Where bodybuilding, you're working in a 60, 70% intensity range, sometimes even lowers. There's a lot of room for error, so there is that. Strongman, you're working in different energy systems, so it's not all one. So there's multiple energy systems, which leaves a little bit more room for error too. So that's where I think it's a weird balance for each sport, but for the powerlifters, it becomes a weird balance because, as we've talked to, you guys were talking about earlier, for a lot of them, they become too conservative. So they don't want to do anything except those main things so they can recover for the next time. But then they don't realize that the lack of moving is inhibiting their ability to recover and to move nutrients. Where I understand what they're doing. I totally get what they're doing. And I don't believe a lot of the times it's out of laziness. It's just like, I can't do this because I'm barely recovering right now from deadlift session to deadlift session. I got to deload every 3 weeks. And so it becomes counterproductive.
Yeah, Matt, has recovery through strongman and powerlifting has ever been an issue for you in terms of just pushing too hard?
Yeah, there's always a balance to it. And, that has to do with nutrition and sleep as well. But just because both those sports are so taxing on you, you need to be able to balance those things. And it's like we just talked about, it's very easy to go a little too overboard, do stupid things. And I think that has to do with the people you surround yourself with too. Because sometimes other people can be good or bad influences on you. And they'll talk you into doing dumb things that you shouldn't do. That can hurt you for, say you can screw things up for a couple weeks in powerlifting if you go a little too hard on this and not stick to the plan. I've done it myself plenty of times where I'm like, things are feeling good, I can hit a PR right now. Do I do it now or I save it for the platform? Well, I'm gonna do it now anyway. And then the platform, what happens? You don't get it because you hit it in training. You peak too soon, So recovery is huge with that. But and I had that mentality too, where if I was squatting or doing whatever the next day, the day before, I'd be like, well, I can't go out for a walk or do some little cardio. It's gonna affect my workout. I just gotta lay here and do nothing and rest. And that's really counterproductive actually. Now I'm super active and I do a lot of different variations of cardio, and I do some, like, I'm big into MMA right now, doing some like light boxing. I'm not a fighter by any means, but like pad work, that kind of stuff. And I feel better doing those things. My mobility's better. I feel like my recovery's better. As long as I don't go overboard on that aspect of it, then I feel great actually. But it's very easy to go, let me go out for a run, and Brett, you like to run, and you go rucking all the time, right? But I'm sure there's some times where you go a little too much, and then the next day you're like, oh, that was a little too much. And now I'm feeling it during my workout, where it's like you kind of just do some moderate pace, whatever, and then the next day you're like, yeah, I feel really good. Because the times where I've taken a day off completely and done nothing but play video games all day, and the next day I'm like, oh, okay, I'm a little stiff now.
That's like the worst thing that you can do that I found for anybody is just to chill out and just sit on the couch all day during a recovery day. It's not a good idea.
I thought I was invincible once. It was when the pandemic first started and I had a day off. So I was like, I'm just going to go hike a 4,000 footer in the winter. It took me like 8 hours. I got home, ate a whole box of cereal, and the next day I squatted 405 for a triple, which I hadn't hit for a couple of years. And I'm like, wow, the key is just do more and eat everything.
It's a cereal. It's like the fucking cereal. It's a box of cereal. I'm never training again without a box of cereal.
Well, they only put one serving in the fucking thing, so I don't know what they're doing.
It was my first time I ate a whole box, and then I remember I woke up the next day and I was like, wow, I look great. I feel great.
Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club. I don't think I've ever eaten a box of cereal and be like, I look good now.
I was still hungry. I could have ate two.
So I think the take-home message is that understanding when that moderation is important and understanding when you can kind of push that gas pedal a little bit.
Everyone's different too.
Yeah.
You have to just figure out how your body works. I know for me, if my sleep is off, at least for more than a day, I'm going to feel it. No matter how well I eat or my training, whatever. If I sleep poorly for 2 days straight, that next workout, it's gonna be pretty crappy.
Yeah.
I can get away with one bad night of sleep and caffeine up, and I can feel great. But after that, no.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to compare your training, and Britt, I'll ask you this after as well, I want your opinion, is from where you were 10 years ago versus now, how tremendously different does that look?
I actually still have my workout books from all back then. I love looking back at them.
Yeah.
My volume is actually higher now, but I think I've built my body up to be able to handle that much volume. So I've always been known for doing more volume in my programs. And so I've been able to build myself up. 'Cause I look back, my workload's a lot more now, but I've also been training for over 20 years. So it's a progression of that. You can slowly increase your volume over time. You just can't jump into it right away when you're a beginner. And a lot of beginners make that mistake of trying to look at like, oh, let me see what Matt's program is, what he's doing right now, or someone else. Like, let me look at what Brian Shaw does now. And it's like, you got to look back at what they did to get there. You can't just be a beginner and say, all right, let me follow this person's exact program and think I'm going to get like them.
Yeah, absolutely. Britt, what about you?
So night and day. So 10 years ago, I was 20. I was doing half marathons, all that stuff. And I still have all my training blocks too. One thing I always did, my birthday's in April. Since the day I can remember, except for I got my license once when I was 17, I've always squatted on my birthday. And when I turned 20, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I remember when I turned 21, I wanted to squat 225 for 21 reps. So I've pretty much always squatted, but I could never, 10 years ago, I don't think I could bench 95 pounds. So much different. Still handle a lot of volume, but I'm definitely heavier, stronger now. Endurance, not as good.
Yeah. For sure. Now, a lot of our listeners are in that training bracket of like training for like 2 to 5 years. They're strength enthusiasts. They want to look better naked. They want to, they just want to be a little bit stronger. What would you say are some of the big blocks that the people in that sort of demographic should really focus in on when it comes to their training in general? Well,
this one's been said a lot, but it's sticking to the program. Program jumpers all the time. I used to be one of them. You do it for a couple weeks, you're like, this isn't working. Screw that. I haven't hit a 50-pound PR. What the hell? And so you do something else. But trust the program. Like I always recommend people when they're beginners, do fifth set, do 5-3-1, stick with it for a long time, for a year. Like I did 5-3-1 for about a year and did great on it. But one thing I did when I was younger that I forgot to mention was I just would go to the gym and just do whatever I felt like it. I would write things down, but I never had a program. So that was one big difference for me was having a program. But also if you're intermediate, I think it's great to hire a knowledgeable coach and listen to them and be coachable because you can make a lot of progress there. I mean, when I first hired a coach, I coach a lot of people. So it's nice to hire someone and be like, okay, what am I doing? Okay, great, easy. Because if not, then I'll get myself into trouble and do stupid shit because I want to just do what I'm good at, right? Like we talked about with my deadlift, I was better at sumo right away. So I was like, I'm just going to pull sumo all the time. Screw conventional. And then in the long run, that hurt me. Yeah. And I got some overuse injuries because of that. And now I rotate things, and my deadlift was even better because of that.
And you pulled 800 sumo and conventional.
Yeah. Sumo, it was much easier sumo. I will say that.
Yes. And what body weight was that?
I was around, when I did it sumo, I was about 255. And then conventional, I was about 280.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Now, we made a few videos on this, on your tips and, your thoughts on how to add more weight to your deadlift. But, like, what were some of those big things that you did that kind of pushed you? Because what were you at before? Did you make, like, a big jump from? Yeah,
I remember so I competed at the Arnold in Strongman. And I did the meet 6 weeks after I did the Arnold. I remember I was working with Josh. And I was like, hey, I want to do a meet. And he goes, all right, it's a little soon after. I was like, yeah, my friends are doing it. I want to do it. And I'd been pulling just conventional for, I think at least a year with no sumo. And then I was like, yeah, I want to start working sumo. He goes, all right, let's see where you're at. And I like smoked 700 for 3, like nothing. And I was like, whoa, that was surprising. Where'd that come from? And I remember the 2 weeks before I pulled the meet where I pulled 8, I smoked 745 for 2. And I was like, holy shit, I might actually be able to pull 800 at this contest. So it was just bringing up weak points. Like my conventional, because I pulled sumo for such a long time, my conventional was terrible when I worked back to it. I remember the video of me doing that, pulling 600 for 2 conventional with the worst form ever, like popped over the bar, all low back, like.
We've all been there, though.
Yeah,
Strongman
competitors.
Competitors, we all have some ugly deadlifts.
But I was getting, I was focusing on strongman, so it was just all conventional deadlifting. But because I worked at what I was not good at, and then went back to sumo, it was like boom, like way up. And me and Dave, we've talked about this, about the weight fluctuations. When I got heavier, pushing 280, my sumo form was just not there. I couldn't get in position as well. I could pull it, but it wasn't nearly as good when I was lighter. But when I was heavier, I had some grip issues deadlifting, which I never had, but I had fat hands. So I couldn't grab the bar as well as I could before.
So what was the first thing when you hit that wall, right? What was the first thing that you looked at in terms of your form or your technique for the lift? Like what was the first big block that you wanted to take on?
Yeah, so when I saw my form and when I videoed myself and I was like way over the bar, I was like, okay, I got to dial this back and make sure. One of my biggest problems with conventional is I get pushed over the bar.
Yeah.
Right? But that's a pretty common one. Like I coach people all day with deadlifting, and it's not taking the slack out and getting popped over the bar. And a lot of it's just setup. You know, so I focused on that, brought the weight down. It's tough because the ego hit, right? Like I can pull it ugly, you know, with more weight, and I could keep reinforcing those bad techniques, and then I'm gonna really hit a wall. Or I can say, all right, let me bring it back to some lower weight, focus on perfect technique, and then build it back up. So one of those things for me was, and a lot of the videos on elitefts, I remember watching ones on conventional deadlifting about having your shoulders in line with the bar. Think of a counterweight, a seesaw, like Dave always say about the seesaw, that coming back that I talked about in my video yesterday. And I just would video and have the weight lighter until my form was perfect, and then just kept working my way back up. Certainly wasn't easy, and it's a lot of people have trouble doing that because they don't want to lower the weight.
It's harder,
and pull it right, or whatever you're doing, squatting, whatever, you have to bring things back sometimes, or you're gonna hit a plateau and you're never gonna move because you're too stubborn to bring it down.
Now, how long was that process of you dropping that weight down?
About a year. Yeah.
That's a very long time.
Then I was pulling over 700 conventional though.
Right.
By that time, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Britt, what about you? Just deadlift's always been kind of a thing for you?
Deadlift's always been very, very difficult for me. I've always been really good with high reps. One of the best things I ever did for my deadlift, it really skyrocketed, was at the Arnold's, we had a 4-inch deficit axle deadlift, 375 per reps.
I'm so happy I did not do that show. I remember I saw that and I was like, I like my back the way it is. I'm all right.
Yeah, so actually I kind of was stronger in that position because I could utilize a little more quads, and front squats have always been my thing. So I was practicing like that for like a 12-week block, and I remember my goal was 8 reps and I actually got 15. And then after that training block, I took like a week off and I went right back to regular barbell deadlifts. And that's when I kind of realized, like, wow, I'm going to pull for an axle with an axle as long as I can, because not having any whip really, really helped me. And it forced me, I've always had back issues, so it forced me to kind of be humble with the weight and not, because in Strongman, like one of my first contests, I was like, I don't care how I'm going to get this up. The hitching is so popular. So then I promised myself, like, I am never going to hitch a deadlift again.
Yeah. That's one of the things that you do see a lot in amateur competitors in Strongman. They're so quick to get into that hitching mode, and it's allowed, but at the same time, it's negatively impacting their performance going forward.
Yeah. So when I coach people, when we're training, I don't want them to hitch. When it comes down to the contests are close to it and you're really prepping for those weights, because you want to get those reps. I'm not going to tell you, don't hitch and not get that rep. Like, no, screw that. Like,
in a contest, completely
I've let my
different.
form go, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna pull this, and if I hurt my back, I hurt my back. Screw it, because I want that one more rep. So I'm not going to tell people I train not to do it. Speaking of Kearney, like he's known for that.
He's good,
right? He's very good at it.
He has like a technique with it,
but he does it very safely.
Yeah,
the way he does
stops
it.
here and then goes back.
It's when you start looking like a scared cat, trying to pull. You get the shakes, and then but no, he's very good at like resting it right in his legs and sitting down.
Takes like a rest.
Yeah, I've just never really had that weak point there to do it. So to me, I never had that problem. I was always either glued to the floor or I got it. But the people who have a weak point there, you should definitely work on that weak point. But when it comes down to it, and you're to get more reps, hey, hitch it. It's allowed. Yeah,
absolutely. Just kind of transitioning into kind of a different direction here. The Arnold is coming up, and you actually have how many athletes competing?
6 from my gym. Yeah.
Now, did they come to your gym strong already, or were they just members of your gym for years and years and built that strength?
When Rob came, he was definitely not strong. Yeah, he was kind of, but now he's like insanely strong. Let me see, Justin Laguerre, no, but he had potential. There's people who are like just need some guidance, and he's in the heavyweights. Nick Sesente is he had a good Olympic lifting background, some CrossFit, and we just kind of got him into the direction of strongman. and now he's axle clean and pressing 355 for reps. Like, so they all had like, and you know when you see somebody, like, you're like, you can be really strong if you really put some time into this. So all of them, Kevin Candido, Ross Remillard, like they came to my gym just kind of from commercial gyms, just doing some like little bodybuilding stuff.
Yeah.
And now they're top 10 in the world in their weight classes.
Now, Dave, because you've had a lot of lifters come in with all sorts of different backgrounds. What is that thing that you can kind of look for that you could tell, like, wow, like that person has that potential?
Some mentality. I mean, it's going to kind of contradict some of the things that we've been saying earlier, but there's a lot of factors that we talked about that are important. Sleep, for instance, that's important. Where if you're an intermediate or you're a beginner and you're following everybody's advice online, and say you only sleep 3 hours, you go to the gym, well, fuck, automatically you're like, well, this day's going to suck. So if they're a competitor, the way I think about that is, so what's that tell me? If you don't sleep well before the meet, you're just going to not fucking work hard. Like sometimes you just got to fucking nut up, man. It's, you didn't sleep well, but this is what you have to do. You need to fucking do it. Or I like to make fun of the pain-free powerlifting bullshit, because what's pain-free about it, right? But if we're to follow the logic that a lot of us will preach, you're doing your warm-up and says, ooh, man, that don't feel right. Okay, well then fuck it, just stop for the day. Because that's what we tell people to do. If it hurts, don't do it, right? Where fuck, everything hurts. That's kind of part of the whole thing. Or the challenge sets that we were talking about, like, they really don't help a whole lot. But let's say you're competing in a strongman and it's a high rep deadlift. And then after the first 3, you're like, son of a bitch, but everybody else has done 12. You got to find a second gear. But if you never did that, you don't know that. But a lot of the advice that these people are seeing is don't go that extreme. Don't do anything that hurts. If you don't have adequate rest, back it down a little bit. Well, how much real fucking competitive type training is going to happen in those situations? There's obviously a risk benefit, right? And there's a fear mitigation that has to happen in there. And if they've never dealt with going up to a set and before you do the squat, say it's a 5 or whatever, and it just for a split second, you're like, man, this is going to be a bitch. We're kind of telling people, well, then just do 3. You got to have that voice that says, fuck that. Fuck that. Why am I even thinking this bullshit? I'm doing fucking 6. Just for thinking that, that right there, that has to be part of the training process. And that's the difference maker. Yes, you have genetics, you have all these other things, but we don't control that. I've always said nobody even knows if they have good genetics or not unless they put 10 years into finding out. Right. And those people don't even put the 10 years into finding out. But they also got to have this attitude that, like, fuck it, if this breaks me, it breaks me. Everybody I know that's been successful in any strength sport, bodybuilding or whatever, has had those sets. We can say, they're not necessary. We can have that discussion. But if you always avoid it, you're not going to, that's like saying avoid adversity with everything you do in your life and just hope for the greatest prosperity possible. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously you're both high in your sports, right? Like, but that ability to face that adversity, right? Like, I'm sure everybody here has had bad things happen to them on a training day or in training.
Yeah, I've torn multiple things.
Oh, for sure. But what I appreciate about your gym specifically is your ability to have the community, the community in which people can get better, get stronger, are supported in their sport, but also have the mentality of like, okay, it's fucking time to work, right?
Yeah. I mean, if someone's going for a PR, or if they're going for like a high rep set where they know it's going to be a killer, like people will like be around them, like yelling at them the whole time, pushing them, not letting them give up. Where, like you just said, you're like, I don't know, there's times where I've done it, we've all done it, where I've approached the set where I'm like, yeah, I'm not really feeling too good. I remember specifically this one day I was training with my friends, and we just shit talk back and forth all the time. And I was feeling like crap this day, and I was supposed to hit a PR in a deadlift, 725 for 2 conventional. That was big for me. And we're working up, and he's a good deadlift too. And he goes first, he hits it, and all my sets felt like shit. And then he hits it, and I was like, I can't fucking let him beat me. And then I go up and I do it, no problem. And the whole time I was like, my knees hurt, this hurts. Like, I don't know, I don't think I can do this today. But because that's having good people around you that can kick you in the ass when you need it. Because even I love to train and everything, but there's times where I get my head to where I'm like, yeah, I'm not feeling it today. Then I can't let someone else do it and then me not do it.
Exactly. I'm so glad too that I got into lifting when I did, because I noticed a huge change. And I think part of that is because of the internet. And one of the first things people ask me, when they're getting into lifting, they're like, what should I buy? And that question pisses me off because I've had the same lifting shoes for 12 years now. They are men's Romaleos. And I see all these people and it's like a trend, and every business is in it to make money, but it's like they just buy stuff. And I'm like, you've never even competed. I'm like, you don't even need a belt yet. You don't need that until you know how to train hard and aren't afraid of things.
Well, they're hoping to think that the gear is going to make them better somehow.
Yeah.
If I get these new elbow sleeves.
Yeah. So that really makes me mad. And I think a lot of it is a generational thing with people putting excuses out. Like, Matt or I or anyone sitting at the table could write something like, let's say we had a bad squat day. We could talk about why it was bad, but we're probably not. So I just think people, again, I hate to use the word soft, but I feel like this generation with the internet, they see other people making excuses and they say the same thing. Like, we've all seen that one competitor that after a contest, explains why they did bad. It's like, just suck it up.
Yeah, well,
part of it.
Talked about it before, Dave. Yeah.
It makes me so mad.
You apologize to your friends and family. They don't give a shit. Like, with this, you don't have free.
sorry,
They're the ones that don't want you to do this shit anymore.
You know how yesterday I was showing you my rules that I give to my athletes? They have to literally sign it. So one of the first rule that I have when someone is competing, I tell them, you do not complain or show weakness at the contest, because you can cry happy tears. That's fine. I did it yesterday. But you don't cry like a little bitch and show people your weakness, because that's going to set a bad example for everyone else. And I don't want to be associated with anyone that does that. Hell no. So.
Well, I think that comes from actually competing, right? I think we're in a world now with social media and whatnot where people just post that they're doing a thing, but they don't actually throw their hat in the ring and compete.
That's a big pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
People, it's like they brag about what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, just shut up and do it. Just do it. Don't post about what you're going to do, what contest, what weights you're going to lift. Do it.
Because I think you may have been the person I was talking to about how many strongman meets you did your first year. Didn't you do
10? I did 10 my first year.
10.
I think 1 or 2 was powerlifting. It was stupid. You should compete. I think in strongman you should get out there and compete more than people do now. Because right now they'll do 1 show, maybe 2 qualify for a bigger show, then that's it. And they wonder why they get their ass kicked at a bigger show. Because competing in itself is a skill. Every show I did, I learned something. I got better at just competing in general. I had that. Because your mental state is so important. If you're not used to being out there like that a good amount, when I did so many, every show was kind of like, all right, I'm good, I'm comfortable, I'm having fun. I'm not as nervous as I would be. Where people now just do 1 or 2, boom, done. Powerlifting, you obviously can't do 10 powerlifting meets in a year. It'd be crazy. You'd be falling apart. But strongman, because it's lighter, some are reps, some are, some might be max, but there's different events every single time. So back then, I wanted to get my hands on as many implements as possible. Plus, there was different equipment all the time. So I've used a yoke like this. I use a yoke that's different. I learned so much from doing those things. So yeah, I did 10 my first year, and I did 12 my second year. You can ask Andy Triana about that. He was with me a lot of those, and just went everywhere. So every time I was like, well, there's a show here, let's go. And I got better because of it. I remember at the end of that second year, everything hurt a lot, but I got so much experience from competing in other places, and plus seeing how other people run shows. I run shows too.
Right.
So now I can see what I don't like, what this person did that was really good. So I'm learning what people do wrong, what they do right. So I can hold better shows now too.
Now, with the people that you train, a lot of them are non-competitors, but how many of them get into the environment and then want to compete in something?
Yeah, a lot do. I've had so many people come to my gym that had no desire to do strongman or powerlifting, and then we're holding one at the gym. They're like, well, I can handle those numbers. I'm like, come on and do it then.
Yeah,
and then they do it and they have a blast. But they always say, I never had that intention. They just want to get stronger, look better, whatever. And because they're around that environment, and I don't push people for that. I don't like to be pushy about those things. I'll just kind of drop it in their head like, you could, you're strong enough, And I won't say you should. I won't bug them multiple times. Sometimes people get, the opposite effect happens. Like, no.
Oh, right.
So I'll just kind of drop that hint once, and then they're like, well, Matt thinks I'm strong enough. Maybe I can do it. So it's really cool to see that happening, because I probably over half my gym competes in something.
which is rare.
Yeah, probably more than 50%. I'd say, yeah.
I think that's my favorite thing in the world to see, because I'm the same way. Like, people are like, do I have to compete if I'm with you? I'm like, no. I'm like, I will definitely have you squatting. That's a goal of mine, to have every single female learn how to squat at least body weight, but not compete. And then when people decide for themselves, like Matt said, like, oh, you could, I'll say that. And then you really see if they do decide to compete, change their life and just the direction it goes in. So that's really rewarding.
That's great.
Well, plus competing in general is going to push you that much harder in your own training. When I got into it, I never thought I'd be good at anything. I just wanted a reason to train harder. You know, having that goal to be on the platform, I know I'm going to work that much harder. You know, so a lot of people sometimes just need that extra motivation.
Well, it's funny because I was going to mention that. I can't imagine that their mentality or their effort towards training didn't change for the positive that week after that
Absolutely.
contest, right? If they were like, oh, I never want to compete in anything, and then you do, they probably come back to you on whenever they see you next and like, did you see me do this thing? It was so cool. You were right about this. Oh, we weren't. Oh, we should focus in on that. And then they take that autonomy of their own training as part. They're now part of that decision-making process with you.
They train harder and they're more consistent, which being consistent is probably number one with this, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Because they could see like, oh, especially if they did something, and it's always like this, they do something better than they thought they would do, but they miss it by like a rep. They're like, I fucking had that.
Yep.
It went from like zeroing the event to like, oh, I could have got second.
Yeah.
I could have got second at that, right? No, that's such a cool mentality to see, and it is something that is rare. But you see it at your gym. You see it at every iteration of your gym. You had that like crew of competitors, and it was like, oh fuck, Lightning Fitness is here for a strongman meet. Yep. We're fucked. We're so fucked. But it was really cool to see. But we're running up about the hour and a half mark. I don't know if we wanted to take this in for a landing here. If where can everybody meet you guys or see you guys? Instagram?
Yeah, my Instagram is Mills Fitness. My gym is Lightning Fitness 860. And yeah, mainly on Instagram. I don't do much on Facebook anymore.
Brittany?
Same Instagram for me, B_Dimes. And I like to travel to different gyms. I was supposed to go to Lightning last Saturday, but the snow changed that. So yeah, I'm always down to train in a good environment.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan. Dave, any last words?
Nope. Wrap it up, close it down.
Perfect. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. I believe this was episode 95. As always, check out elitefts.com if you need to buy anything that goes in a gym bag or load it on a bar. We got you there. And on behalf of myself and Dave and the rest of the crew, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.